genealogist.com. Hope you're having a good day. Today I want to talk about a way for genealogists to get out of the rut that you might find yourself in, especially when you think, wow, I'm not sure what other steps I can take to continue on this particular line, or what can I do to sort of break out of the rut that I'm in. I've researched all census records that I know of that are going to reflect what I'm trying to study. I have obtained as many vital records. I've run out of some ideas on some things to kind of give myself a boost and to break out of the pattern or the wall I've sort of painted myself into. What can you do to sort of break out of the rut and stimulate your projects and get yourself going again? Let's take a look at a few ideas.
Breaking out of a rut might involve turning off the computer and leaving the house, but instead of heading to the archives, perhaps it's time to visit the old hometown where your ancestors lived so you can follow their footsteps. The first stop should be the courthouse where the family is rooted. At the courthouse, you will find marriage, birth, and death records. But instead of looking at individual records, which you may have already obtained, this is a good time to use the indexes and to search for some of those collateral ancestors, the aunts, the uncles, and cousins that you possibly ignored in the past. Remember, your grandparents often had siblings, and a good way to stimulate your work is to follow them, especially those female relatives that married into other lines. Follow them and follow their families and take your research in a new direction. At the courthouse, you can also find land records. The same concept of following those collateral ancestors applies to land records. You may know that a great-grandparent acquired land, but perhaps his brothers also did, as well as the uncles. And how was the land first acquired? Was it homesteaded? Was it acquired through purchase? Or was it inherited? Don't forget the neighborhood, the old neighborhood. After the courthouse, it's time to take a stroll. Find the old streets, the old neighborhood, and if you can, locate the old cemetery. You do want to know where they are buried, and the old cemetery will give you lots of clues. Is the cemetery near a church? If so, that alone tells you something, for this is most likely the family place of worship. Pull out a death certificate and examine it once again. If the name of the informant is not familiar to you, then following this one person might open up some new doors as well. While in town, don't forget to visit the local library. Pull out the city directories when you get there. City directories are wonderful resources to tell you about the community. You learn not only who lived there, but you learn about local businesses, schools, and associations. Also, pay close attention to the advertisers. You're getting, oftentimes through those ads, large-sized clues as to where your family banked, where they shopped, and where they worked. Find some local history books. A good idea is always to learn something about the history of the community. Whether or not your ancestors were town leaders, the policies made by those leaders still had an impact on the lives of your own ancestors. And don't forget to see what publications the local genealogical societies have produced. Many genealogy societies have initiated projects documenting the local histories of families in the community. There is a possibility that one or more families in which you are interested could be included. Is there a national cemetery nearby? If there's one in the area, a visit to that burial ground might reveal more history for you. Are there any Civil War soldiers buried there? Do you know how to recognize them? Were many of those soldiers from the same regiment? If so, how did they come to be buried in the town? Did they die in a battle nearby, or did they live in the community after the war? And if so, do you know the history of that particular regiment? What do you know about the soldiers that enlisted from your community? Keep note, men rarely enlisted in the Civil War, especially alone. They enlisted alongside comrades, brothers, and in some cases, fathers and sons. During the war years, how did the women folk fare during those times of absence? Were some of them suddenly widowed, and were they forced to work, or did they choose to remarry? Children without fathers were also impacted, and many times they were expected to work. Are there military men and women in the family? Military records reveal many things about the men as well as women who enlisted. World War I draft cards can tell you a lot about the community. Besides learning where an ancestor lived, one learns the name of the employer or the employer's business. These pieces of information give the researcher another glimpse at the community from a different perspective, and thus can stimulate the story. Don't forget the people. While visiting the ancestral community, your greatest asset will be the people. Even if you feel that there's no one to talk to because the elders are gone, keep in mind one thing. If the town still exists, there is probably someone there who likely knew your family or heard of your ancestor. So remember, sometimes the best way to get out of that rut or to get out of that corner you may feel that you've painted yourself into is to simply leave the house, go and walk in the steps of your ancestors, and you may come back invigorated and ready to begin the process again.
There's so many things that you can do, and sometimes it's good to just put the pen down, close the books, get off the computer, get offline, and get outside and do some other things. Remember, there are cemeteries to be documented. There are historical places to visit. Follow the footsteps of your ancestors and document the story in a different way. Hopefully you'll break out of that rut, and once you started to acquire new information by getting away from the house and away from the computer, you'll be energized and ready to start writing and telling that story again. Anyway, I hope this has been useful. You take care, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.